Go. Good afternoon. I'm Trudy Murata, volunteer community ambassador with AARP Virginia, and I want to welcome you to Making Sense of Caregiving Costs, and thank you for joining us today. Over the course of this webinar, you'll learn how to incorporate financial tips into your caregiving journey, and by the end of this session, we hope that you'll have the confidence to make your own plans, as well as have a better understanding of how to plan for your care recipient. You will receive a complimentary copy of the AARP Financial Workbook for Family Caregivers within the next week to 10 days. In the reminder for today's webinar, we included a link to download the PowerPoint presentation and a link to the resources page listing all the websites that we will share with you today. This program is being recorded, and in a follow-up email, you will receive a link to this recording. We are in Zoom webinar mode today, so we're not able to acknowledge the raised hand icon, but please feel free to put any questions you may have in the chat box, and we should have time for questions and answers at the end of the presentation. AARP is striving to make it easier for older people to live independently and remain in their homes and communities where they would prefer to be, surrounded by family and friends. By providing planning resources and additional forms of support to family caregivers, excuse me, AARP hopes to create a place where people can continue to live in their homes and communities for as long as they choose. To help achieve this, AARP is supporting the millions of family caregivers who provide unpaid care to their loved ones with resources and tools, and advocating for, as well as providing better quality, affordable, and accessible services to help older people live independently with the family caregivers who support them. Caregiving can be an all-consuming experience that leaves caregivers exhausted and lonely, but it can also be an enormously meaningful accomplishment. Many of today's caregivers feel that their role gives them a sense of purpose and meaning in life. Family and friends are the backbone of America's care system, providing the bulk of care for older adults in the U.S. as they strive to live independently. So we at AARP applaud you for deciding to spend some time with us today to find answers, support, and resources to help you on your journey. And now, onto the program. I am thrilled to be joined today by Katherine Ponds. Like being, Katherine is also an AARP Virginia Community Ambassador, and we're very fortunate to have her on our team. Prior to entering the career management field in 1995, Katherine held diverse management positions in executive recruitment for both government and nonprofit organizations. Her corporate successes include growing revenue and profit in dynamic and highly competitive industry sectors, and developing and overseeing execution of career, talent, and change management solutions, as well as helping organizations optimize their human capital, downsizing, and career management activities. While Katherine is indeed a professional career coach, her role here is to provide general tips and resources in making sense of caregiving costs. So with that, let's give a warm welcome to Katherine Ponds. Katherine, platform is yours.
Great. Thank you so much, Trudy. I appreciate the introduction. And as Trudy was describing my background, I would add to that, like many or all of you, I also have been and am currently a caregiver. So as we go through today's session, a lot of what we will be discussing will be reflective of experiences that I have had as well. So let's get going and begin. As Trudy mentioned, if indeed you do have questions, please be sure to put them in the chat box because we will pause periodically to take your questions. So with that, bear with me one moment. For some reason, I'm having a bit of a technical difficulty. Okay. Let's start with a brief disclaimer, and this is important because we'll be sharing a great deal of information with you that is included in the workbook. And by the way, there is a link to the workbook in your reminder email. And as Trudy mentioned, you will also be receiving a hard copy. But the presentation today is intended to provide broad guidance. This is not an effort to provide specific legal or financial advice. We encourage you to work with your professional legal and financial advisors as you begin to get into the details of the planning process. Also keep in mind that this is a high-level overview. There will be specific situations that are relevant to you and your family. So again, there will be differences that you may have that will not be reflected in what we are covering today. And again, it is important to make certain that you engage with a professional. And something that I have found can be useful from today's session, you may find that today will help you identify additional questions that will be useful as you are meeting with your financial advisor or with your legal advisor. Caregiving is, in fact, a labor of love. I mean, it may sound trite, but it is true. But it also comes with quite a few responsibilities. And while it's hard to put a price on caregiving, it does indeed come with some very real out-of-pocket costs for you. You may be picking up groceries, helping with housework, making trips to the doctor or pharmacy. Keep in mind, all of these little things do indeed add up. Having a clear picture of what's involved, whether it's your care recipient's health, housing, or finances, lets you plan ahead and make the juggling act just a bit easier. So this is why we have developed the financial workbook for family caregivers. And again, I want to emphasize, this is indeed a workbook. So use it, update it from time to time, and again, take advantage of this very specific planning tool. It is designed to help you focus on the financial aspects of your caregiving journey. And as we move forward, keep in mind, we will use the terms care recipient and loved one interchangeably throughout the presentation because, of course, both terms do accurately describe the loved ones that you are providing for. So as we move forward today, let's take a moment and again, keep in mind that there are a plethora of resources at your fingertips today more than ever. When I think about what our parents perhaps experienced as they were engaged in caregiving, it was much more challenging to uncover those resources. So again, there is a link to resources in your reminder email. And then of course, on the AARP site, there are just, again, innumerable resources available. But a little brain tease here. In 2021, on average, how much did family caregivers spend on caregiving expenses such as transportation and home modifications? This is a poll, so why don't you drop in what you think was spent by caregivers?
Getting the responses now. It looks as though the majority of our guests believe that the answer is B, 7,242.
And that is absolutely correct. But when you look at that number, that's significant, particularly because it's not as though you're sitting down and writing a check for $7,200. But again, it's a little here, a little there, and it does indeed add up. Let's go to our next poll. So, how many hours did unpaid caregivers, and we're talking about unpaid caregivers, provide to adult loved ones in 2017?
Oh,
And remember,
those numbers are fluctuating very much. It looks like the majority of them are putting him at 3.4 billion, but we're kind of tied between A and C also.
good. Well, the correct answer is C, 34 billion hours. And this was in 2017 in a single year. That's an awful lot of time that is going toward taking care of our adult loved ones. So as you think about, again, what it means to be a caregiver, it really is about putting in untold hours and resources. And when you overall, when you think about the cost of care, $470 billion in unpaid care. And again, it is absolutely a labor of love, but this is why planning is so important, because that structure is essential so that you are able to devote the appropriate time and resources. So let's look at the cost and how those break down. More than 3 out of 4 caregivers incurred some or all of these out-of-pocket costs. Why did family caregivers incur these expenses? Well, certainly, as I've mentioned, out of love, but also because professional home care costs so much more. In 2018, Genworth, a company that sells long-term care insurance, estimated the average monthly cost for home care services, things like light housekeeping, meal prep, running errands, at more than $4,000. So this would be if you were paying someone to come in to provide homemaker services, that averaged in 2018 at more than $4,000. The cost for a home health aide, someone with medical training who can assist with bathing or other personal needs, were about $200 more a month, adding up to more than $50,000 a year. So when you think about the costs of bringing in a professional versus providing many of these services yourself, there is a tremendous difference when you look at the costs. How do you pay for all of this? Well, as you can see, about 1 in 10 have taken money from their own retirement savings, which certainly will have a long-term impact. People take out loans. They also spend less on their own health care. And we're talking about those who are providing care, spending less on their own health care that, as you might imagine, will have potentially an adverse impact long-term if the planning is not there. And then nearly 1 in 5 reduce the amount they are saving for retirement. Not a particularly pretty picture when, again, that structured planning is not in place. So again, this will give you an idea as to just what that financial impact is. And in addition to providing these caregiver resources for webinars for AARP, I also deliver job search webinars. And what I see very frequently is that there are many, many people who are indeed cutting back the hours that they're able to work in order to care for a loved one, and or they're even quitting their job. So as you can see, the financial impact of caregiving is quite substantial. So what can you do to safeguard your future and finances? Plan, and plan some more, which brings us to the bulk of today's discussion. The financial workbook for family caregivers is the document that we will be referring to and using today. And again, there is a link to that in your reminder email. The first page of the guide says it all. Dear family caregiver. This guide was designed to help you on your caregiving journey by AARP and Jessica Allen, who was a caregiver for her husband. So again, we recognize the toll caregiving can take. So we've developed this set of tools to help you prepare. So a few points I'd like to highlight here. First, as we've discussed, the cost of caregiving is high. Most families can spend close to $8,000 per year caring for a loved one. Please take note of our piggy bank symbol throughout the guide. We added those in so you could specifically see tips that can assist you while caregiving. So again, when you look at the guide, you'll see a piggy bank symbol, and that's reflective of tips that can assist you while caregiving. Second, every caregiving journey is unique. There is no one size fits all. Your journey is yours, and there are no right answers, just your answers. You may be able to complete the workbook in a day, or it may take several days. Whatever works for you is what works best. So this presentation will simply hit the highlights in hopes of helping you complete the guide at your own pace. And remember, you may go back and find that you need to revise the guide from time to time as circumstances change. Finally, this is obviously a sensitive subject, but we all know that caregiving can be very stressful, especially over long periods of time. Remember, it's just as important to take care of yourself, both your physical and mental health, as it is to look after your loved ones. So please do that for yourself and for the person you are caring for. So today we're going to focus on health, money, housing, and most importantly, the future. And let's start with health. And again, what you will see as I go through the presentation today, and there is again a copy of the link to a copy of the presentation in your reminder email that you receive, but you will see the corresponding pages from the workbook included throughout today's presentation. So first up, let's walk through the health section of the guide, where we're going to begin documenting plans for the health care of your loved one. We'll cover a wide range of topics, including health, sickness, and even death. These topics can be quite difficult to discuss, but it's vital to make the right plans for yourself and those you provide care for. Before you begin filling out each section, you'll want to take the time to gather your key information that will help you complete that section. So for example, before completing the healthcare team section, you will want to collect all of the contact information for your care recipients, doctors, hospitals, and pharmacies. So let's start with your healthcare plan. The section begins on page 5 of the guide. You'll want to answer some very important questions about the care of your loved one. First, who does your care recipient receive care from? Do they use Medicare? If they are a veteran, what about the VA? Is there private insurance? There's so many possibilities for healthcare coverage. Make sure you take the time to understand not only who the insurer is, but learn about their caps, copays, deductibles, and perhaps most importantly, coverage. On the next page of the guide, you will list health issues, medications, and accommodations. This page can be extremely helpful at any and all doctor appointments and hospital visits. Naturally, emergency contacts are a must for any caregiver. And not just your information, but who can step in for you with little notice. Hopefully you have more than one person who can jump in. What other details can you add to this page to help medical staff with their care, with your care recipient? Does your care recipient, for example, have allergies that medical staff need to be aware of? Do they have difficulty hearing or seeing? Do they live with memory loss or dementia? So again, all of this is important information to include. As a caregiver, oftentimes you may feel alone, but you are not. Make caregiving a team sport and recognize that there are many others who are able to help you throughout this journey. In this section, you'll document all necessary contact information, such as obviously names, addresses, phone numbers, email information, and websites. Your care recipient's care team should know you and should consider you, the caregiver, as one of the most valuable team players. Caregivers can provide medical professionals with crucial information that can make a difference in treatment. And caregivers can often provide details that the care recipient forgot or perhaps didn't notice. And this is something that I experienced when I was a caregiver for my mom. Because again, she was very good before her doctor's appointments of making notes about whatever she had planned to discuss. But when I or one of my siblings accompanied her to her doctor's appointments, we were also able to add in, for example, things that we observed, or we were able to augment some of what she shared with her physicians. So again, making certain that you are providing as much information to doctors and other providers. You might also want to check if your state or the state where your loved one resides and gets medical care has passed a version of the CARE Act. That's C-A-R-E Act. And what the CARE Act does is it makes sure caregivers are recognized when their loved ones go into the hospital. They're also notified when the patient will be released and given instructions they need for continued care before their loved one returns home. And this is important because while you certainly will be working with a team, it's also important that there is a point person on the team. So again, make certain that you understand what those requirements are associated with the CARE Act, not just where you reside, but where your loved one resides. Let's think about other members of your healthcare team. Do health aides visit your home? Do you have a secondary caregiver that steps in for you so that you can take a break, or even simply run to the grocery store? Who can step in with short notice? Are you a member of a church or community-based organization? Could a member of one of those organizations assist you? Do you have someone to chat with from time to time about the stresses of being a caregiver? Because I imagine that if you are in that role, you understand it is quite challenging from a stress management perspective. You can list all of these people in this section of the guide. We'll also, again, provide you with information on additional resources. And again, that you have that link to those resources as well. Respite care is something that can be beneficial from a stress management perspective for caregivers. And if you're not familiar with respite care, it's essentially a short break from regular caregiving duties. As we've said, caring for a loved one is stressful, and it can have real consequences on the physical and mental health of the caregiver. A 2015 National Caregiving Survey by AARP found that 85% of caregivers said they would find respite helpful. Sadly, access to respite is limited by location, income, and the health condition of your loved ones. One of the links that we provided for you contains information that might help you find respite care in your area. Because again, many jurisdictions do have those types of resources available, frequently at low cost, or in some instances, no cost. Adult daycare programs can provide caregivers with the needed break as well, while giving older adults a chance to socialize with their peers and remedy the isolation and loneliness that many experience. The programs they provide and the costs associated with them can certainly vary, but again, your local area agency on aging can help you with that information. Now we'll look at some of the legal aspects of caregiving, starting with the power of attorney. A power of attorney, or as designated here, POA, is a signed document in which a person appoints someone else to act on his or her behalf. Powers of attorney are sometimes limited to a particular purpose or period. Other times they are general. And do keep in mind that state laws on powers of attorney, power of attorneys, do vary. So know what the law is wherever you and your care recipient reside. And let me just interject here, it's never too early to begin thinking about a power of attorney or a POA, because we assume oftentimes that our loved one will age gradually or their health will gradually decline. However, sometimes that health will decline almost literally overnight. And I'll share as an example, I had a family member who on the surface appeared to be reasonably healthy. They were in their early 70s, but they had a stroke. And a consequence of that stroke is that they developed aphasia, meaning they were not able to communicate in verbally or in writing initially. Well, they needed a power of attorney. And quite frankly, we were not able to do anything initially until the individual's health improved to the point where they were able to understand, again, reach the point where they could understand the POA and then sign the relevant documents. So we were fortunate in that they were ultimately able to sign the power of attorney, but that's not always the case. So keep in mind as you're looking at the guide regarding the power of attorney worksheet that, again, this is just a worksheet. You will still need to consult with legal counsel in terms of establishing a POA. So once you have finished the POA worksheets, that's when you can use that as a foundation when you are obtaining legal advice. The POA also must be notarized in order for it to be binding. So note that many financial institutions and medical treatment facilities may require their own POAs. You should also know that generalized POAs are not as widely accepted as they have been in the past. So it is at the discretion of every financial or medical institution, or even a business, to determine what POA they will accept when you are doing business with them. Do keep in mind that you can also name multiple people to act for you in POAs. While many people have one or two others they grant power of attorney to, you can choose to give a POA to whomever you wish, as long as the POAs do not conflict with each other. So you do want to make sure that you are working through appropriate professional counsel when it comes to POA, because it does need to be effective and cover specific institutions and circumstances. Where you keep your POA is also vital. We suggest you keep the original somewhere that it can be protected from fire, theft, flood, or other damage. You should also give a copy of the POA to the person you are designating and encourage them to put their copy in a safe place. Some people acquire safe deposit boxes from their bank just for their POAs and other valuable documents. This is entirely up to you. If your only copy is in the safe deposit box, make sure your designee knows that and can access the POA when needed. Will and estate planning. Another very sensitive topic, and one that can also be extraordinarily emotional. It's also important, however, to make sure you take the time to complete this section as you are engaged in the planning process. These pages can become your voice after your passing. The people reading these pages will be grieving your loss, but the information you provide can actually help them with their grief. If you take the time to list out what you want to happen, it takes the guesswork out for them. It can greatly reduce their stress and grief levels during what is a very, very difficult time. So just like the POA pages, these questions need to be applied to both the caregiver and care recipient separately. You might be thinking to yourself that you don't have an estate. However, each one of us has an estate. You might just have a few bank accounts, a pet, some material goods in your home. But guess what? Once you pass, someone has to sell all of these things for you. So take the time and help them know what you want them to do. If you have minor children, you will definitely want to complete the will and/or estate process as soon as possible. Remember, just like the POAs, the pages in the workbook are not binding. While some courts might take into consideration your wishes upon being presented with these completed worksheets, it is in the best interest of those you leave behind to have an official will and/or estate. Again, consult a legal professional so that you can make certain that your wishes are carried out appropriately. This is one of the most sensitive subjects that many of us will encounter for ourselves and our loved ones, and that is about internment options and plans. Again, we're going to dive into this very difficult topic because it is extremely necessary, difficult though it may be. It's important to make sure your final wishes are known, and documented. This will likely be a tumultuous time for your loved ones, and providing an internment plan will help ensure your wishes are carried out and will spare your loved ones from making those difficult decisions. We've only included one page in the guide for your care recipient, but there is plenty of space to add your wishes in as well. To ensure your end-of-life plans will be carried out, visit with the funeral home and let your attorney know. They can suggest additional resources to help you complete this process. End-of-life costs are the most important parts to consider when deciding your burial plans. Do you have enough in savings to cover your burial costs? If not, do you have enough life insurance to cover the costs? Do not leave the expenses to your loved ones. Plan ahead so they can focus on grieving and settling your affairs. Again, these are very, very difficult topics, but they are important ones. So pick your time when you sit down with your loved ones so that, again, you can be clear about their desires. I'm going to pause here and see what questions we might have thus far. Trudy?
Hi, Catherine. We do have a couple of questions and comments. I'll acknowledge that one of the questions I'd like to save for the end, because I know you talk a little bit about adult daycare centers, so I'd like to hold off on that one. The other one was a suggestion that perhaps AARP could develop an app that could be integrated with some other systems. And I've made a note of that suggestion, and I will certainly pass that along to the teams at AARP that develop apps and resources, because that is a good suggestion. But the one question that has come up is with regard to caregivers. Are they entitled to reimbursement for costs incurred like an executor would be entitled to?
That's a great question. And this is where I would encourage you to check with your local jurisdiction. And this is where oftentimes through the Office on Aging in your local jurisdiction, whether it's both the state and or if you're living in a large metropolitan area, city or county, may have the Office on Aging. I would encourage you to check through them because there, in many instances, are resources that are available to caregivers that are indeed available.
And in some cases, that might be a state area agency on aging or a
Correct.
county area on aging as well. So that would be the local
Absolutely.
jurisdiction. Some states are small enough that it would be a state agency. Other larger states may have county related agencies.
That's correct. And I would encourage you to check with both.
And Catherine, another question that has come in with regard to the workbook. They've asked if the workbook is available electronically. Do you want me to answer that one?
Right ahead, Trudy.
Okay. In the reminder for today's program, there was a link that you can download the workbook. It's a PDF link, but we will be mailing the workbook to you within the next week to 10 days.
Absolutely. And again, it is important that you are able to, again, use the workbook as a workbook, if you will. This is about, again, being able to enter information, to revise and update information as needed. So you will be able to do that as well. Okay. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about housing. While this topic may not be as difficult as some of the topics we've covered, such as our final plans and wills and that sort of thing, this is certainly a very, very important topic that deals with day-to-day life. So we're going to focus on the housing and life at home for your care recipient. We'll also talk about transportation, which is incredibly important to think about to enable your care recipient to live in their home and community for as long as they choose. And we are finding that more people are choosing to spend their final years in their homes. We will also talk about diet and allergies, and then we'll kind of rifle through the filing cabinet. So as we begin to look at life at home, this section is intended to help you and your loved one get your home in order. If you live separately from your care recipient, you might want to take the time and fill out pages for yourself as well. So make sure you list due dates, amounts due, where the payment goes, and all other vital information about whether it's a mortgage or rent, etc. You will not want to miss or be late on payment. So make sure you do this for all bills related to your care recipient remaining in their home. Again, this goes beyond mortgage and rent, but also homeowners or rental insurance, property taxes, utilities. Budget billing is available with most utility companies and should be used when possible. Companies are using different terms for budget billing, but what it really is about is where, with your utilities, for example, the utility companies will provide an average of your utility costs so that you're paying the same thing every month. Again, this budget billing is important because it can help from a planning perspective. Also, don't be afraid to ask for discounts with all the companies involved in your home. So for example, there might be a military discount or other discounts because of organizations like AARP that you belong to. And check to see if your state has a tax-free or reduced property tax exclusion for your care recipient. A reduction in property tax can save you and or your care recipient thousands of dollars. It can be quite substantial. Also, remember to ask for discounts on your homeowners or rental insurance policies as well. Again, this is not the time to be shy. Find out about those discounts because it all makes a difference. Access to transportation can be an important factor in your care recipients remaining in their home. Can your care recipients still own, operate, and or drive a vehicle? If so, use these pages to list all the information needed to own and operate a vehicle in their area. If you are the only driver, use these pages to help fill out the information for yourself. Please be sure to check with your local county clerk's office and see if your care recipient is eligible for any discounts or tax exclusions associated with transportation. So for example, Purple Heart recipients in the state of Tennessee can receive 2 free license plates. These license plates can save hundreds of dollars per year. Many states offer similar types of benefits. Some states require automobile owners to pay property taxes on their vehicles. Make sure you know if that's the case in your state or in the state where your care recipient resides. Again, it's okay to ask for discounts on your vehicle insurance and public transportation. These saved dollars can add up very rapidly. And another point to keep in mind if you do have a loved one who is continuing to drive, it is so essential that you monitor that driving and know when to take the keys, because the care recipient is not always going to readily volunteer that they no longer are capable of driving or wish to give up driving. So again, please keep that in mind as well. Do you or does your care recipient have a special diet? Do either of you have any food allergies? Use this page to help list those. This page can also serve as a shopping list, especially if you have dietary items you need to buy every week. Does your loved one need an EpiPen? You'll want to list the expiration date for the EpiPen. Jot this in the other column or in the special equipment category. Again, the point is to have all of this information recorded. Keeping important documents secure is a necessity. And to do that, you might consider getting a home safe. The contents of every safe will look different. We all have different vital documents. This list is here to simply help you get started. You can always add different types of documents to your own list, and some of the documents listed may not be relevant to you. If you do not have a safe and need to purchase one, make sure it is able to withstand fire. Also make sure the safe locks, and put the key in a secure location and remember where you put it. You might even consider getting a safe with 2 keys to keep each set in a separate household for safekeeping. Make sure you use that lock. Locking your safe provides one more level of protection from identity theft. As mentioned earlier, you also might want to consider getting a safe deposit at your local bank. And again, people may be in and out of your home, so securing these important documents is absolutely crucial. Like the safe contents, there's also a file contents list intended to help you get started on organizing your files. Consider placing your files in a locked filing cabinet to help reduce the chances of identity theft occurring in your home and to protect them from accidental damage. And again, remember where you put the key or keys. And as we're talking about file contents, as you're setting up a filing system, don't overcomplicate matters, because again, the objective is to have these documents readily available in case someone else needs to access them on your behalf or on behalf of your loved one. Now, one of the most important responsibilities as a caregiver is planning and managing money, both your own and your care recipients. Home is where most of us spend the majority of our time, and it's important to make sure your home is a low-stress environment. Though difficult, discussing money doesn't have to be stressful. By taking the time to make your dollars work for you and your care recipient, you can create peace of mind that will help make your time at home more enjoyable. So in this section, we'll be discussing budgets, investments, and debts. And again, when you're discussing money with your care recipient, pick your time. It's a difficult subject, and your care recipient may not be eager to talk about their personal situations. But if you pick your time and manage this appropriately, you will be able to engage in effective planning. So the first budget pages in the workbook are for you, the caregiver. If you are married to your care recipient, you'll probably want to combine your budgets. It's vital that you give every dollar in your home a day. And what you're doing here is, again, building a monthly budget. The worksheets have categories, but you can add additional categories as needed. Use a method that works for you, but at the end of the day, you're striving to achieve a zero-based budget. And by that, you want to make certain that you account for every dollar. AARP offers a free online tool to help you set up your budget using the AARP Home Budget Calculator. So that is an additional resource that you may want to take advantage of. You do also need to estimate your caregiving expenses, and I can assure you from my personal experience, oftentimes you're not even aware of what you are spending for caregiving, because again, you just do it because it needs to be done. However, when you budget and plan, it makes a tremendous difference. So this is where you would add or include specific expenses related to caregiving. We've also included a sheet to prepare a budget for the care recipient. Remember, unless your care recipient is your spouse and you've done a combined budget, this budget is different than the one you filled out for yourself. Apply the same thoughts from your budget to your care recipient's budget. If at all possible, the care recipient needs to be involved again in that budgeting process. And most will want to be if they are capable of doing so. Investments. Again, you need to not only have money to invest, but you need to decide your risk tolerance toward investing so you can determine where you should be placing your money. And this is where a financial professional comes in. Spend the time researching investment companies and decide which one is best for you. Make sure you ask about their fees and commissions. Find out if they will be acting as a fiduciary. That would be someone who manages money or other assets for another person. It should go without saying, but you'll want to be sure that you're making more money than you pay out in fees and other assets or other costs, rather. That is another very crucial area that you want to address from a planning perspective. So our debt page provides you with a simple template so you can begin organizing your debts to create a get out of debt action plan. It's not that being in debt is a bad thing. Most Americans must make payments for a house, car, student loans, credit cards. But the problem isn't the debt, it's the interest rates. The original debt you started out with can easily double or triple if you're not careful. Being debt-free can offer some additional financial freedom and peace of mind. So there are numerous ways to eliminate your debt. Most financial experts recommend organizing your debts from the smallest to greatest balance, and you can pay the minimum payments on the bigger debts and take your available dollars to eliminate your smaller debts. Sometimes we need professional assistance with organizing our debts, and your bank may have someone who can assist you. For additional financial strategies customized to your situation, check out AARP Money Map. Again, this is another tool that can be quite beneficial. And then the last section that we're going to focus on today is the future. And this is something that's important to you, the loved one you care for, and everyone in your family. What does your future look like, and what are your goals? Do you need additional education to achieve your goals? Do you have a retirement plan? Do you need to save more for retirement? How might your caregiving responsibilities affect your plans? So much of this is about you, as well as your loved one. It's important for you to thoughtfully consider all of these questions and speak with your care recipient about what they want for their future as well. So use information from the financial section to evaluate your options. We've included a page for the caregiver as well as the care recipient. These plans could be similar, or they could be vastly different. We've included resources in the workbook, and most importantly, key terms. And the key terms that are referred to here would be definitions of terminology associated with caregiving, and terminology that can be useful as you are meeting with professionals, whether they are medical professionals, legal, or financial professionals. So having these terms at your fingertips can be quite useful. Again, as we indicated previously, in your reminder email that you received about today's webinar, there is a link to resources as well. So with this, let me pause. And Trudy, do we have any additional questions?
No additional questions at this point, Catherine, but I'm going to go back to the one question that we got earlier, and it sort of borderlines on asking your personal recommendations on this. You either are or have been a caregiver. I have been a caregiver to both of my parents, my father-in-law, as well as my husband. But the question had to do with adult daycare. Who is adult daycare most useful for? Do you have any thoughts to that end?
And I guess I can answer that from a couple of perspectives, assuming that you're referring to which individuals would find it most useful. I would say, again, it really does come down to the person. Some people are very social, and you will naturally assume that they want to take advantage of adult daycare. They will want to be involved with others on a regular basis. Having said that, do not overlook people who may be more solitary from a personality perspective, because we may assume that they enjoy their own company. But at the same time, even though they may not wish to be around others 5 days a week, even a day or two can help from a socialization perspective. So that makes a difference. What you also want to consider with adult daycare would be the activities that the organization is providing. Are they activities that your loved one can absolutely engage in? So for example, are they doing lots of arts and crafts, and your loved one may not have the physical dexterity to engage in arts and crafts? And if that's, and I know this is a somewhat extreme example, but the point is, find out what the activities are, so that when your loved one is with others, they are able to be fully engaged and participative.
Exactly. Yeah, I found in my circumstances that the centers that were most accessible to us just didn't have the staff. It wasn't the type of facility that my loved ones were going to be comfortable in. So a lot of times it is dependent on the center itself, the staff in those centers, and the individual's needs, wants, desires. I have a comment from one of our guests saying that my mom went to an adult daycare center, loved it after the first day, but fought me on it to get there. So it can be challenging, and it can be a trial and error type situation.
Very much so, very much so.
And that is all I have as far as questions and answers. Do you have any final comments, Catherine?
Yes, and I would just say to wrap up, again, the resource provided with the workbook can be very, very beneficial. When you think about the categories that are covered, again, health, housing, money, the future, and just the resources provided, these are essential. And the objective here is to lessen, you'll never remove the stress completely, but lessen the stress of being a caregiver. And by planning, by being as structured as possible, when the kinds of things that you cannot plan for develop, at least you'll have some of this covered more effectively.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Catherine. On behalf of AARP Virginia, I'd like to thank Katherine for sharing her time and expertise with us today, but also thank all of you for joining us today. We would love to get your feedback on today's program. In the chat box, you will see a link to a survey. If you have a moment, please click on the link and take a moment to share your comments with us. We will also put the survey in the follow-up email, along with the resources shared and a link to a recording of today's program. While we are winding down for the holiday season, we do have some other virtual programs available that could be of interest to you. And those activities can be found by going to aarp.org/virtual VA. That's aarp.org/virtual VA. Give me 1 second. I'll do one more question because I think we've got time for it, Katherine. It just came in. Suggestions on what can a caregiver do when the recipient is not wanting to have anyone else in the home to help?
Mhm. And that can be certainly very difficult. Sometimes it's simply looking at the amount of time that if they need someone, if they need that help, and you, the caregiver, are not able to be with them during the day, it may be a matter of starting out with part of the day. I know with my mother, initially, she wanted no one there. And eventually her doctor was able to convince her that she needed someone there part of the time. And then as she continued to age and became comfortable with having someone there during the day, then eventually she was more open to having someone there around the clock. So again, it may mean bringing in someone a couple of days a week initially. It may mean sometimes trial and error. That's what we found with my mother. It wasn't eventually, it was having the right person, because even as we started bringing people in, there were some that she just had no tolerance for. And we needed to bring someone else in. And so it can be a slow and gradual process. It can certainly, having the help of the medical professional can absolutely make a difference. My experience was don't expect it to happen overnight, because with my mother, it did not happen overnight. And for a while there, we had to rely upon family members to come in and be with her in a more subtle way, because she really wanted to remain in control.
Exactly. Thank you. Thanks for taking that last question. Thanks for asking that last question. And with that, I will again say thank you to Katherine. Thank you to all of you for joining us today. And we will see you again soon. Again, we have other programs available at aarp.org/virtual VA. Until next time, happy holidays, happy new year, and stay safe. Thank you all for joining us.